Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the managing director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. As the title of this video suggests, we're sort of posing the question, stimulus is not the same thing as an albatross. What are we talking about here? I thought of making this video after reading a recent article from the Bangkok Post, bangkokpost.com. Article is titled, Cabinet Approves Plan for 2024 Budget Boost to Fund 500 Billion Handout. You know, and the first thing I would say is, when did Thais ever need a handout? You know, this whole notion of, well, we just need to give them a handout. Well, you know, when you start taking the dole, it starts becoming a problem. And I do understand there are people that are in a position, unfortunately, where they may need a little help. And I certainly sympathize with them and empathize with them. And if I was in that position, I would just do what I had to do as well. But that said, you know, one thing that we can see from, quite honestly, what's going on in the West is what the end of the road is, if you will, when you have a bunch of quote-unquote handouts, and it's not a good place. That being said, quoting directly, the Cabinet on Tuesday approved a plan to boost the 2024 fiscal budget by 122 billion baht to help finance its delayed household stimulus scheme, Deputy Finance Minister Paupom Rosanasakun said. The long story short is, one, how is this stimulus really? When you think about it, as we've discussed in other videos, one, they're going to create 2 orders of magnitude more liquidity. They're going to print 2 times more than the amount of money that currently exists in the banking system. We did the videos on that in the past, where I cited one of the writers from the Bangkok Post that I happen to be I admire quite a bit. His analysis is generally pretty well spot on, hits the nail on the head. And if he may be a little bit more of a Keynesian than I am, but that said, you know, the analysis was pretty spot on, where, you know, he brought up the fact that we're going to create 2 orders of magnitude more money than is currently in the system. And then on top of that, the actual benefit that he noted was pretty negligible. You know, so it really does pose the question, is this stimulus, or is this going to be like in the Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, I believe by Samuel Taylor Coleridge, if I'm not mistaken, wrote that poem. The Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, where the albatross eventually is darn near about to pull the mariner under the waves and subsume him, basically pull him down to a watery grave. Is this so-called stimulus something akin to that, where it looks good at first, it's something that people sort of say, oh, that's something nice, and then later when we've printed and indebted the nation to the tune of 2 times more money that is currently in the banking system, doesn't it stand to reason that that's going to be some sort of a problem down the road? I mean, I would think it would be, and quite honestly, I remember in the 90s in the United States, it was anathema to have the government intervene the way that in the United States especially, it has intervened, especially since the great financial crisis going back 2006, 7, 8, and 9. And we saw all of this government intervention, all this so-called quantitative easing, which is just another word for money printing, and all these, the Operation Twist and all of this stuff that's come along since then, as well as what I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but SOFR and all of these, you know, later plans. At the end of the day, printing money and creating more debt, generally speaking, unless you can see, tangible societal benefits. You know, if you go into a bunch of debt to create new infrastructure, well, there are benefits that come to society from that new infrastructure. In this situation, as we've talked about in many other videos, they're just creating digital tokens and indebting the nation for those tokens, which can't be spent on anything, they can't be spent anywhere, and they have an expiration date. There's a timing mechanism which turns them off, if you will. On top of that, it creates a situation where there's a full-on surveillance network over private transactions. Again, what are we getting out of this? A great line in the movie Beverly Hills Cop 2, you know, where he says, where's the bad guys at the end of this rainbow? I've been signing off on all of these expenses. What are we getting out of it? You know, and that's what I would say is, you know, they say it's stimulus, but what's it stimulating? As we've discussed, all it does is move goods and services around. It doesn't create new value. It just moves it around in the system and then creates taxable events thereby. So at the end of the day, I really do pose the question, is it stimulus or is this thing an albatross?